Start.
Okay, so this was our very first group project of the semester. This was the Our Education game, where we had to come up with a game that helped facilitate lesson plan making. And I was working with Jen and Megan, who I've never worked with before, and I've had 2 courses with them, so it was nice to finally get a chance to kind of get to know them and work together and bounce ideas off of each other, and we came up with the twister concept, which I thought was a really fun way to make up these lesson plans. And we had a couple problems, but we ended up fixing them in the end. um, I feel like collaboration was such a huge theme throughout this course, and it's funny because you would think that it being like the last semester before student teaching for a lot of us, that we would be working more independently. But we were doing all this group work right up until the end. And I thought it was interesting because we never really dealt with that before. We didn't do it really a lot in curriculum instruction. It was a lot of independent, just trying to figure out where we stand as teachers. And I think that this is why this semester for me was a lot of personal growth. Working in a group setting is a challenge for me. I'll be honest, it's really hard for me to do. I would rather, have all the responsibility on me than depend on somebody else or delegate responsibilities to another person. So I feel like throughout this semester it was just me constantly learning how to stand up for myself, because I don't like confrontation either. It's really, it's tricky in a group situation. So voicing my own opinions and learning to listen to other people and work together to create something and make something work. So this was the presentation for our thematic lesson. I worked with Julia with this, and we chose the theme fear, because we thought it was pretty relevant today with the age group that we're working with. Adolescents are going through such big changes in their lives that fear, I think, is something that they experience on a daily basis, but they might not feel incredibly comfortable talking about it. So that's why we chose it as our theme. Um, I remember this day. I was so nervous. I'm one of those people that is incredibly comfortable in front of a classroom full of students, but cannot give a presentation in front of her own peers. But my nervous energy, I think, was really contagious that day, and I put it into something really positive and tried to get everybody going with asking everybody, what's your fear? What are you afraid of? And I think it really worked. It got everybody really energized and ready to participate in the presentation, and that really helped as far as making me not nervous.
A particular one?
So this is where we got a little off momentum. A question was asked about expressionism, and then I was kind of interrupted in the middle of trying to explain, and then Julia jumped to the next artist without us really covering the first one. So we had some issues there, and from then on it kind of just went downhill with our discussion questions not scaffolding um, as well as they should have. And I don't know, sometimes I think you get really nervous and you forget what you're supposed to say, and I think that's what happened because we had rehearsed questions and we did have questions planned out. It just didn't go that way, and it was unfortunate. So I feel like one of the biggest disadvantages of going toward the end was that there was an obvious difference in the amount of energy everybody had at that point um, for participating. And I feel like they got going after a while once we started talking about phobias, but the beginning was really like painstaking and slow. And I think Julia and I just kind of underestimated what was going to happen and how people were going to react for the opening discussion. And what I learned from it was that we really should have done something much more dynamic. We should have come up with something that would get everybody moving and out of their seats, and something that would, just wake them up a little bit, because getting through this part was just so slow.
Everybody had a fear.
So this was the part of our lesson where we did demos. Julia had just finished up doing a demo on the 180-degree rule, and we both agreed that we would have, a volunteer come up from the students. And so somebody who's more visual could see it done and understand what we were talking about. What we also should have done was had the worksheet passed out at that time so people could follow along and understand what we were talking about better. And then I did a demo on props because I used props in my teacher example. What we really should have done was had a little demo on the camera. I think what we both did was we assumed that our students would know how to use a camera, and that wasn't smart, because you should never make assumptions like that when you're teaching. You should always put yourself in the viewpoint of the student and know the way they're thinking, and try to help them as much as you can. And by making assumptions, that doesn't help anybody, and it just blows up in your face. We should have, gone over close up, full shot, medium shot, zooming in and zooming out, things like that. We also assumed that they would automatically know that when they got into their groups that they would have to divvy up the responsibilities between them to get everything done in a timely fashion. And we assumed that everybody would just know how to work in a group, which is silly, because even as adults, Julia and I had problems collaborating on this lesson. So, we should have talked more about storyboarding too. There were a lot of things that went wrong, but all in all, I think, aside from that, this is why we practice. This is why we do this, so we can learn and we can get better and not let these little things get in the way.